Welcome, fellow travelers of the forgotten roads and wanderers of wilds to the verdant enclave. I'm your host, and sometimes friendly DM. More relevant to today's discussion, I'm also your fellow wanderer and wilderness guide to the Ranger class of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning from the last few videos, thank you for continuing on this journey into the Ranger class with me. Last time, we discussed the level 3 features, when the Ranger gains Primeval Awareness and their subclass. If you want to hear the details, feel free to check out the videos. So, what happens next? As mentioned previously, fighters tend to have only one primary choice to make at first level, which is their fighting style. By contrast, the Ranger has several to make at first, second, and third levels. And each of these choices help to guide the eventual tactics and strategies of the individual Ranger. But now at 4th level, the choices finally start slowing down. At 4th level, the Ranger chooses the same as other classes, whether to increase an ability score or to take a feat, if that is allowed by your DM. Remember that feats are an optional rule. There are certain feats which will help you to capitalize on what your Ranger can or will do in their character progression in exact particular ways, such as Sharpshooter if you are a ranged character, or Observant if you really want to play into the heightened senses of the Ranger. Ability score improvements will improve your general potential performance. Choose what will work best for you, what will complement what you have built already. As a general rule of thumb, for myself at level 4, I usually prefer improving my ability score, particularly that ability which I rely on for my offense, as it increases my chance to hit and my average damage overall. If I am relying on dexterity, for example, this has an added benefit of increasing my armor class, my stealth skill, and my initiative as well, among other things. In this manner, depending on how I build my Ranger, I can potentially maximize my offensive ability by level 8, so that the rest of my character progression can be focused elsewhere, and I don't fall behind on damage potential and combat contribution. This is not, however, the only way to build a Ranger. Obviously, it's only my particular preference. I understand that other players might want special abilities granted by feats, and there's nothing wrong with that. To reflect the more general approach, I've built 4 separate Ranger builds at level 4 using only Player's Handbook. Each one of these has a different spell loadout, a different combat style, and a different subclass feature. And I'll cover in brief some tactical approaches of the different examples, as well as the average damage per round of each build. Let's dig in, starting with the Beastmaster. This Ranger is a variant human who chose Sharpshooter at 1st level and went Beastmaster, obviously, at 3rd level, with a Bloodhawk for a beast companion. I chose leather armor at 1st level and the archery fighting style at 2nd. Along the way, I switched leather armor out for studded leather, and chose to increase my dexterity by 2 at 4th level. Now this Ranger has an armor class of 16, 36 hit points, and for spells has Goodberry, Speak with Animals, and Beast Bond. My Beast Companion has an armor class now of 14, hit points of 16, and adds my proficiency bonus not only to the armor class, but also to its skill in Perception, boosting its passive perception. The Bloodhawk also adds my proficiency bonus to its chance to hit, as well as its damage. The Beastmaster is going to have a much higher challenge with their tactics, because those are going to vary depending on what beast you have as a companion. For these levels, a flying beast companion can be used to gain advantage reliably on attacks, or be kept close to the ranger to be their individual combat support in case an enemy draw close enough to present a threat, or simply used to attack each round along with the ranger. For spells, Goodberry and Speak with Animals are good for a multitude of scenarios in and out of combat. But for in combat, Beast Bond is my choice for this particular ranger, but not just for the reason of gaining advantage on attacking enemies within 5 feet of the beast's companion, but because one of the Beastmaster's biggest weaknesses, in my opinion, is the fact that all orders are supposed to be made verbally, which is problematic if the ranger is trying to be stealthy, or is underwater, or in an area affected by silence. Beast Bond allows for telepathic communication with friendly beasts, and lasts for 10 minutes with concentration. Now, as I understand it, this would mean that the ranger would be able to issue commands to the beast companion telepathically, preserving stealth, and working around speech obstacles like distance, magical silence, or being underwater. In our sample scenario here, the ranger and his beast companion are up against a single orc. Now, assuming initiative rolls go in our preferred manner, the ranger is going to go first. The ranger uses their action on round 1 to command their hawk to take the help action, then uses their movement to put distance between the orc and the ranger, keeping the hawk with him. The orc then probably uses its aggressive trait to cover 60 feet, can attack with its javelin, or dash in order to get into melee. On round 2, the hawk is now told where to go, flies up to the orc, and uses help. If there's enough room, the ranger now attacks with advantage, or as normal if the enemy is too close. The ranger can now choose to take -5 to their attack with sharpshooter. If they hit the target, they will deal an average of 18.5 points of damage. Alternatively, on round 1, the ranger uses their action to command the attack, uses their movement to put distance between the orc and the ranger, keeping the hawk with them. The orc uses their aggressive trait to cover 60 feet, can attack with javelin, or dash to get into melee. On round 2, the hawk is told where to go, and attacks the orc with +6 to hit. If the hawk hits, it'll deal an average of 6.5 piercing. Then the ranger attacks, and if hits with normal attack, does another average of 8.5, or an average of 18.5 if using sharpshooter. I'll call this build the Buster. This Dragonborn Ranger is a hunter subclass who chose to go Giant Killer at 3rd level, and took the Tough Feat at 4th. I chose Scale Mail at 1st level, Defense Fighting Style at 2nd, and along the way picked up a Shield and a War Pick. Now at 4th level, this character has an armor class of 18, 44 hit points, and for spells has Fog Cloud, Cure Wounds, and Ensnaring Strike. Due to the choices made, the Buster build is not overly particular on what weapon they wield, beyond it being one-handed, and preferably 1d8 or higher, although d6 works as well enough. In most combats, the Buster wants to be a tank, holding the enemy back from reaching the rest of the party. However, if they spot a large or larger foe, they will want to focus on that enemy, though preferably one at a time. Ensnaring Strike is a good bonus action spell for the Buster build to use, as it can impose the restrained condition combined with auto damage. But at low levels, it will be fairly easy for stronger foes to break free from it. So use this spell against dexterous, medium, or smaller enemies. Fog Cloud is a great battlefield control spell, as it removes all disadvantage and advantage, depending on how and where it's placed. While Cure Wounds usually isn't my first choice for a ranger, especially a melee ranger, it can work on this build particularly when in combat against a large or larger enemy, because the Buster build can rely on their reaction to continue making attacks on a regular basis. Mobility will be a challenge for this character, and players will want to pay attention to their hit points and time when they cast Cure Wounds or retreat from combat. Here the Buster build is put up against a brown bear, which is a large-sized creature. On round 1, the ranger can bonus action cast Ensnaring Strike and attack. They have a 75% chance to hit this bear, with an average damage on a hit of 7.5. The brown bear gets to attack twice, but as soon as it takes the attack action against the ranger, as long as he can see it, the ranger gets to attack immediately, whether the bear hits or misses. Again, 75% chance to hit, with an average damage on hit of 7.5. Depending on how things have gone, maybe Ensnaring Strike has landed, maybe it's restrained the bear, and the bear now has 0 movement, disadvantage on all attacks, and all attacks against the bear have advantage, plus getting the damage of the spell. On round 2, the ranger can consider if healing is needed. If they take the action to heal themselves, they can still rely on their reaction to get at least 1 attack in on that round. If you're up against a taller enemy, like a giant, you can instead cast Fog Cloud in a way that it blinds the giant, but the bottom of the cloud is still above your head, leaving you free to see. Since the giant would thus be blinded, they would have disadvantage on all their attacks, while you would have advantage on all of yours. Bear in mind that Fog Cloud is still concentration, and there's a good chance of losing that when in melee. I'll call this build the Waycarver. This half-orc ranger is also melee focused like the Buster, so is currently relying on Scale Mail and a shield for an armor class of 17. At 2nd level, this ranger took the dueling fighting style, and Hordebreaker at 3rd level. At 4th level, I chose the Shield Master feat, with the result that this ranger has 36 hit points, a bonus action shove after an attack action, and for spells chose Detect Poison and Disease, Jump, and Longstrider. Built in this manner, the Waycarver wants to get at least 2 enemies in close to their weapon's reach, and these spells reflect that desire. Longstrider would be best to use to get close to enemies who are already near to each other, or to keep away from dangerous enemies, and keep them from attacking by forcing them to keep dashing. Jump can be used to maneuver, especially if there are elevated positional options, because as long as you can keep enemies from attacking you, you protect your hit points, until those enemies are gathered close enough to each other, in which case the ranger now can use Hordebreaker. Remember that a ranger does not have the same staying power for long-term melee combat that a fighter or paladin does, so pay close attention to when you should break from sustained melee combat. At these low levels, you can attack both of these enemies, use the Shield Master bonus action to try and push an enemy away, and then run, provoking only 1 attack of opportunity instead of 2. Or you could potentially knock an enemy off a cliff, or knock them prone so other melee allies can have advantage on attacking. For the Waycarver build, the battlefield is something very important to take note of, as its constraints or features will control how much or little you can move. And since you're going to be dealing with multiple enemies at a time, getting pinned down can be deadly. Stay light on your feet, keep moving, and try to move to where you have avenues of escape. Bear in mind the maps are three-dimensional, and for a strong character, jump really opens up options to move, and benefits from being concentration free. Target those groups of enemies that are made up of smaller foes, the underlings, and clear them out so that the rest of the party can handle larger singular threats. Here in our example, this ranger is up against two orcs. On round 1, the ranger casts Longstrider on themselves and runs 40 feet away to create room. Their foes now have to make ranged attacks or dash to close the distance. As they draw near to the ranger and converge together, as a result, the ranger reverses course on round 2 and can attack first one, and if the second one is within 5 feet of the first and in range of the melee weapon, the ranger can now attack the second enemy as well. The ranger has a 65% chance to hit with an average damage of 9.5. The ranger can then take their bonus action to shove one, potentially either to prone or 5 feet away. The Speedster build. This Wood Elf is also a melee-focused build, but will focus on utilizing stealth in combat, which makes the choice of scale mail armor at first level a bit strange, since it imposes disadvantage on stealth checks. This could be addressed by increasing dexterity and switching out scale mail for studded leather, but instead I chose a feat at 4th level. At 2nd level, this ranger took 2-weapon fighting, went to the Hunter Enclave as a Colossus Slayer at 3rd level, and took the Dual Wielder feat at 4th. This results in an armor class of 17 when both weapons are out, or 16 without dual wielding. 32 hit points, and for spells has Hail of Thorns, Hunter's Mark, and Detect Magic. As built, the Speedster wants to deal with already wounded targets, preferably one at a time, which is why this particular build took the iconic Hunter's Mark, though there is potential conflict with bonus action economy. For which reason, Hunter's Mark is not a go-to spell, nor should it be constantly relied on, unless the ranger sees a particularly large singular enemy like an ogre. If there is a larger group of enemies all gathered close together, that would be a great time to open combat with the longbow instead, and use Hail of Thorns. Even if foes succeed on their saving throws, they will still take half damage at least, and that's all the Colossus Slayer needs. Let's put this ranger up against a group of enemies. On round 1, the ranger bonus action casts Hail of Thorns, then attacks with the longbow and moves away. They have a 65% chance to hit the targeted goblin with an average damage from their bow, of 7.5. Whoever fails on their saving throw against the spell, Hail of Thorns adds an average of 5.5 on a failed save, or 2.75 on a success, to the original target and to everyone within 5 feet of the original target. On their turn, the goblins chase after and probably shoot after the ranger. On round 2, the ranger now drops their longbow and uses their interaction to draw both weapons and attack. The first attack that they land, Colossus Slayer comes into play. In this particular scenario, the ranger will not rely on Hunter's Mark, because there's too many attacks coming, and therefore too many chances to lose it. The ranger with their swords has a 65% chance to hit, with an average damage, with Colossus Slayer included, of 11 points on their first attack. And then, with their bonus action attack, 65% chance to hit, with an average damage of 6.5. Here the ranger finds themselves up against a singular big target, an ogre. On round 1, the ranger will bonus action cast Hunter's Mark, then move to an area of naturally caused light obscurement, like tall grass, trees, fog, or rain, because as a wood elf, they have the Mask of the Wild feature, and they can take the hide action in light obscurement, as long as it's naturally caused. Once hidden, the ranger will move, if they have any movement remaining, and await the enemy's arrival. On round 2, the ogre moves up to the area the ranger last was seen. Cannot attack, they have to take the search action, or attack at random. On round 2, the ranger uses their action to attack with advantage from hidden, assuming they weren't discovered, and then a normal bonus action attack. If both attacks hit, you get your weapon damage, Hunter's Mark damage, and Colossus Slayer damage, all in. If your enemy survives, repeat attacks as necessary, but as normal. And as normal, watch for when you should disengage and reposition yourself. Now, let's assume that situations are ideal for each of these rangers, that their particular conditions are being met. The Buster is fighting a large or larger enemy, the Waycarver is fighting 2 enemies who are side by side, the Beastmaster is using their Bloodhawk to attack simultaneously with them, and the Speedster is fighting a single wounded enemy with Hunter's Mark running and Colossus Slayer every turn. How would each of these builds compare to the baseline average damage per round? First, the baseline for 4th level is 8.25 per hit. This is based on a Warlock using Eldritch Blast, so at this level, it's fair to say that this can also be baseline average damage per round. The Beastmaster, with their Bloodhawk attacking simultaneously, is doing an average of 15 points of damage per round, which is 6.75 points, or 81.82% above the baseline. If the Beastmaster is instead using the Bloodhawk to gain advantage and then attacking with Sharpshooter, the average is now at 10.25 points, or 130.3% above the baseline. If they are both attacking, and the ranger is using Sharpshooter simultaneously, their cumulative average damage per round is 25 points of damage, 16.75 points, or 203.03% above the baseline, which is very powerful, but only if you hit. Using Sharpshooter takes your chance to hit down by a significant margin. Against our example enemy from earlier, for example, it takes your chance to hit from 80% to 55%. And remember, that is average cumulative damage, based on the Ranger and the Beast Companion both hitting. The Buster build, with both their main attack and their reaction attack, is doing an average of 15 points per round, which is 6.75 points, or 81.82% above the baseline, just like the Beastmaster combined with the Bloodhawk. The Waycarver is doing 19 points of damage on average per round, which is 10.75 points, or 130.3% above the baseline. Bear in mind, however, that this damage is being spread between 2 different targets rather than a singular target, because that is what the Speedster focuses on. The Speedster, with Hunter's Mark, attack, and bonus action second hand attack, and Colossus Slayer, on average is looking at 24.5 points of damage per round, which is 16.25 points, or 196.97% above the baseline. Now granted, these are averages, and not all damage rolls are going to be consistent. But not all battle scenes are going to be the same, nor are you always going to have the same resources available for every fight. The point of these sample builds is to show how the separate choices at each level can be stacked with each other to produce different tactical options, and potentially how these abilities, tactics, and choices can be cumulatively effective. I hope you're finding this interesting, and I hope you'll join me for more exploration into the Ranger class. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.